All right, where do you want me?
Trigger. I think we got one here.
Bouncing on my knee. Where do you think I want ya? Hands on the hilt, stupid.
From TV shows like Rings of Power, The Wheel of Time to films like Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy is back on the menu.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys!
Now I think it's a great thing, as I love a good fantasy. But with the new movies and series being released, we need to answer one big question. Why do they all sound so British? As a naturalized Brit,
Hey, look at me, I'm British!
Wow.
and someone who enjoyed the country for over 18 years now, I'm well accustomed to the local culture. Fish and chips, the weather, queuing, I love it all. However, in fantasy and the science fiction genre, which on the surface is about imagined worlds where anything goes, British accents seem to be the default. And what's more, the audiences expect it. But why? Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien had a major impact. He's called the father of modern fantasy for a good reason.
This night, the land will be stained with the blood of Rohan. March to Helm's Deep.
Because as an English writer and philosopher, he anchored a big portion of Middle-earth in the mythology, languages and history of the British Isles. Now he drew inspiration from Welsh to create several of his languages.
Strangers from distant lands, friends of old, you've been summoned here to answer the threat of Mordor.
Tolkien admitted that the Shire was based in rural England and the old world in Europe.
Nice to see you. Welcome, welcome. Are all these children yours?
Good gracious, you have been productive, haven't you?
Now I live in southwest, and driving through the village roads and the countryside feels like being in a classic fantasy world. I'm not even talking about Wales or Scotland, which is even more magical. Now, geographically, if Hobbiton and Rivendell are where Oxford is, and where Tolkien was a professor, then Minas Tirith, around 600 miles south, is in a place of Florence in Italy.
Faint and fading hope that one day it will flower. The king will come, and this city will be as it once was, before it fell into decay.
So yes, Lord of the Rings. But why do these trends continue, like in films and series? Another reason is Harry Potter.
That's better, isn't it? Holy cricket! You're Harry Potter!
Another hugely popular fantasy series written by J.K. Rowling, a British author.
Well, take a good look, lads. This night might well be the last you spend in this castle.
Now, the movies reflected the Britishness of the fantasy world.
What was that?
Bludger. Nasty little buggers. But you are a seeker.
It became a mainstream view of Britain and fantasy.
I, a rabbit, harping home. Turn this water into rum.
But what about Game of Thrones?
I'm guilty of a far more monstrous crime. I'm guilty of being a dwarf.
J.R.R. Martin is American, so you'd think the characters would fit the American setting, especially since it's a fairly recent production, but they still used British accents.
Tell me, which do you favour? Your fingers or your tongue?
Your Grace?
Fingers or your tongue? If you got to keep one, which would it be?
Now, Stephen Tierney, admin of the Game of Thrones UK fansite, said J.R.R. Martin was inspired by European medieval history. So the events were based on British history, the War of the Roses and the royal families. And even though Martin is called the American Tolkien, the American setting would not work in a Song of Ice and Fire books. As far as the TV series goes, even Peter Dinklage, born in New Jersey and played Tyrion Lannister, said that the New York accent would not work, it just doesn't sound right. So he used a posh English one.
Thank the gods. I haven't had a proper shit in 6 days.
Matt Zollersides, a TV critic, concurred that the trend is so ingrained in the fantasy genre that he's surprised when the characters don't speak in British accents. Why not change the trend? Well, we have to look at history. I'm not a historian, right? But if we say that the medieval era finished in the 15th century before the Renaissance, America skipped all of it. There were no castles, no knights, taverns, and all sorts of stuff associated with fantasy. So the American accent is considered modern and wouldn't fit a medieval setting, even if it's a fantasy world.
I think I am the son of Poseidon.
But that doesn't explain the science fiction genre, which takes place in the future.
Governor Tarkin, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
So between the 16th and 18th centuries, Britain expanded its empire to the American continent, South Africa, Honduras, and Asia. Many places. Now this led to their recognition as one of the dominant nations with global influence. You know, the mentality of superiority instilled around the world persists even in modern times. The British monarchy is, to this day, celebrated, but known around the world. TV series like The Crown keep it going.
And who's fed you this poison? Your mother?
No.
And the late Queen's, now King's, aristocratic British accent is considered to be elegant, pleasing and attractive. It represents nobility. And because we, the people, like to categorize others, when we hear a particular British accent, the posh variety, we may automatically assume that the speaker is intelligent, affluent, and kind-hearted, sophisticated. RP, or received pronunciation, is a symbol of class, education, and wealth. And the prevalence of this accent in broadcasting, politics, and arts played a crucial role in reinforcing these perceptions.
I've also eaten vegan sausage rolls. Have you eaten a vegan?
I've not, but it's meant to be a monster hit for that bakery chain, isn't it? Yeah.
So in films and TV series, if we want the audience to know straight away that the character is sophisticated, we give them the proper English to speak to elevate their importance.
Where have you traveled? From Tyr to the Two Rivers, and many towns between. What is the purpose of your travels?
Now, I focus on fantasy, but the expectation of a British accent affects other genres too. I mentioned sci-fi, Star Wars being an example.
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
But then ancient Romans and ancient Greeks are often portrayed with British accents.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
Children! Gather round. No retreat. No surrender. That is Spartan law.
So it just makes everything sound more civilized and refined. For American audiences, it makes the characters sound different to their everyday life.
My name is Lieutenant Aldo Rain, and I'm putting together a special team, and I need me 8 soldiers.
So even though fantasy and sci-fi are prevalent, this trend also affects other genres. And of course, the more it happens, the more we expect it.
Once a king or queen of Narnia, always a king or queen.
May your wisdom grace us until the stars rain down from the heavens.
Long live King Peter!
And it is harder to change it. Now, when I search for the exceptions to this rule, there aren't many fantasy movies with American accents. Hercules or Xena TV series are good examples. Funnily though, the Hercules series was filmed in New Zealand, and many actors weren't even American, yet they spoke with American accents.
We've been down this road before. The last time you almost cost me a friendship.
This time, it'll cost you a life!
Legend of the Seeker, created by Sam Raimi, is another one, although it was cancelled after 2 seasons.
I don't want to leave without saying goodbye.
Well, if you're going to stay longer, I suppose I can find something else for you to do.
Even with this series, there were concerns about the accents. So there are many different reasons why filmmakers use British accents. There aren't any written rules for it, but for now, fantasy equals British. Now I wonder if we ever see a blockbuster high fantasy movie with American accents. It's probably a bit of a risk for the studios, and with, meme culture, I could see it going viral for all the wrong reasons. However, I got another idea. Now hear me out. Lord of the Rings remake with Polish accents. Let me leave you with that thought. Thanks for watching.
Uciekajcie, jeszcze czas. A ty zostajesz.
Jestem Willem Treten. Nie zatrzymała was lawina, którą spuściłem na wasze głowy.